Hello everyone, we are going to start a soft story check. So in this check we are going to learn that how the soft story check is to be performed in our ETABS model. First of all, in the topic of the soft story, we are going to learn that when our story will become a soft story. So this is the first thing we are going to learn in the topic of the soft story. But before starting the topic, let me open the check model which tells about the progress of our model here. So if you look at checking the torsion irregularity is already done and we have to check now the soft story. So come back to the ETABS for starting the soft story check. Now let us understand that when we will call that your story is coming under the soft story. So the code has given you some criteria to define the soft story. So first of all, we will understand that what all the criteria is prescribed by the code to become any story as a soft story. So let me open the whiteboard to explain this. There is two type of soft story. One is stiffness soft story and second is stiffness extreme soft story. So if you look at here, the difference of the two soft story, the word only says you that extreme means there is a large soft story you're getting, and the first one, that is a stiffness soft story, it is just like a normal soft story. So if you look at the word definition here, you can just see here in the stiffness soft story, the stiffness soft story irregularities is defined to exist where there is a story in which the lateral stiffness is less than 20% of the story above or the less than 80% of the average stiffness of the story above. Now let me explain you in this with this diagram what actually the definition says you. Now let us understand this definition with this example. So you have a building and this building is having a different stories. Let us call that this is story number 1, a story number 2, a story number 3, a story number 4, a story number 5, a story number 6, a story number 7. And different story will have a different stiffness also. Let's suppose that a story number 1 is having a stiffness of 80 and a story number 2 having a stiffness of 100. Let's suppose that. Now if you look at the definition here, it tells you that in which condition your story will come under the soft story. So if I am checking the story number 1 here as a soft story, then I have to look at that above story's stiffness. So your above story stiffness should have at least 70% here in the story number 1 to become a story number 1 as a soft story. So if you calculate it, story number 2 a stiffness, so 70% you calculate it like this, because I have to look at the, if I am checking the story number 1 stiffness that it is coming under soft story or not, then I have to look at the story number 2 stiffness here, that is story above here. So story above 1 will be 2 here, so I have to see the 20% of this. So 20% of 100, if you just see, it will come 70. So now you can just look at that, we got a 70% of story number 2 as a 70 here. Now if you look at the story number 1 stiffness, we are having a 80 here. So if we have a 80 here as a story number 1 stiffness, then this story number 1 will not come under the soft story. To become a story number 1 as a soft story, this value should come lesser than 70. Let's suppose that if this value is coming 50, then this will become soft story because 50 is lesser than 70 here. So we have understand that to become any story as a soft story, the lateral stiffness should lesser than 70% of in the story above here. So this is the first condition. Now you can just see here, the second is that or less than 80% of the average stiffness of the 3 stories above. Now the second is that this is the first thing that you have to look at here. Now the second thing also you have to look at that you have to calculate it the 80% of the average stiffness of the above 3 story. So you have to calculate the story 2 stiffness, 3 and 4. Let's suppose that this you have given 100, a story 3 you have given 120, a story 4 you have given 150. So you have to calculate the average of it, and after calculating the average you have to calculate 80% of this average, and after calculating 80% of this average you have to check it that in that condition the story number 1 is having a soft story or not. Now if I will check in this condition which I have taken this value, so if I will take the average here, let us take it this average, so 100 plus 120 plus 150, it will be 370 now, and you have to divide it 3, that to become an average, and now it is coming 123 here. So now we have to calculate 80%. No, 70% will not work. You have to calculate it 80%. As you can see here, 80% we have to look at here. So 80% of 123 we have to see now. Now let us calculate it. Now it is coming 98. Now you compare. Let's suppose that if story number 1 is having a 80, in that case this story will come under the soft story because 80 is lesser than 98. So there is two condition. You have to check the both of the condition, 80% also and 70% also. If you're looking 80%, in that case you have to take the average of above 3 stories, and if you are considering 70%, in that case you have to take it out only the above stories stiffness only. Now let us look at the second type, that is a stiffness extreme soft story irregularities. So the only difference in this that instead of checking 20% from the above story, in this case we have to look at the 60%, and instead of looking 80% here as the average stiffness of the 3 stories, we have to look it here as a 20%. I think you have clearly understand that when your story will become a soft story and when your story will become extreme soft story. In case of extreme soft story, the lateral stiffness will be less than 60% of the story above, or if you taking an average, in that case it will be less than 70% average stiffness of the 3 stories above. Now we have understand the theory part. Now we will apply this theory in our ETAPS model, and we will look at that whether our story is also becoming in a soft story or whether my story is becoming an extreme soft story. When it become an extreme soft story, then it is very very danger for our building. You can look at the consequence of the extreme soft story. So when there is this extreme soft story, in that case your structure may go into the failure in the times of the earthquake. So when earthquake comes, when the stiffness of the lower story is very very less as compared to the above stories, as you can just see that, then a story may have gone through the failure here. Now you can look at the cases where the story become a soft story. So if you just see the first case here, where there is a no infill masonry wall is there in the ground floor. If I am considering this as a ground floor, so you can just see here like the apartment and all, in that case there is no any masonry infill walls are there in the ground floor, then this will come under the soft story, because if you look at the stiffness above here is more as compared to the below of it, then obviously this story will become a soft story because there is no any masonry infill walls are given here. Now if you look at the second condition, where there is a long column in the story below here, if this is a ground floor, and if the ground floor will have a long story, or sorry, if ground floor will have a long column, in that case the stiffness of this particular story will become less, and that's the reason why actually this story, or we can say this ground floor, will become a soft story. If you look at the third here, the soft story caused by the discontinuous column here. If you look at here in the ground floor, there is no column continuously coming here, and if this is not coming here, in that case, if it is a case of floating column, in this case the stiffness of this particular floor will be more as compared to the ground floor, and this is the reason where this story will come under the soft story. Now this is the end of the part where we have studied the theory related thing of the soft story. Now in the next part of the soft story, we are going to apply the soft story check in our project, and we will find out that whether our story is also coming under the soft story. If it is not coming under the soft story, then it is very very good, and if it is coming under the soft story, or if it is coming under the extreme soft story, in that case I will tell you the remedy of it. Thank you.